What if some of your own habits are quietly sabotaging your mental health and contributing to the chaos in your life every single day? In this video, I'll unmask the top 5 sneaky saboteurs that are quietly stealing your calm and contentment so you can stop them in their tracks and reclaim your peace. Hi, I'm Beth, and by addressing my own self-sabotaging patterns, I've recovered from complex PTSD and narcissistic and emotional abuse. And since 2019, I've been helping women overcome stress, overwhelm, anxiety, and depression using these very same strategies. But first, to really grasp how these habits are hurting us, we've got to discuss the elephant in the room. The world just doesn't understand what's happening on a spiritual level. If we seek understanding of suffering from secular sources, it's like trying to learn calculus from a kindergarten math book. To save ourselves a ton of confusion, it's crucial to begin with a biblical foundation. You can do that with this video. To unmask our first self-sabotaging habit, we need a trip to the grocery store. There you are, selecting your bananas for the week, and you can't help but overhear part of a conversation between a mom and her young daughter the next aisle over.
I don't have time for you right now. Why can't you be more like Mary? Of course I love you, baby. You're just too sensitive. You're capable of anything you set your mind to. Stop that. I'm so disappointed in you. You're the reason for all my problems. Oh, come on. Stop being so dramatic. You better stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Sometimes I wish you were never born.
A study done by the National Science Foundation found that the average person thinks between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts every day. But what is sobering is that 80% of these thoughts are negative. That's the exact ratio you heard picking out your bananas. Which ones have you told yourself? The study goes on to say that of those thousands of thoughts, 95% of them were repetitive. That's negative propaganda. And negative propaganda has a way of making us believe things that are just not true. See if this example sounds familiar. You've been hurt bad by someone in your past, but you know other people who have gone through more extreme trauma. So you tell yourself,
nothing to complain about. My issues aren't nearly as bad.
And instead of acknowledging and working through your experience, you minimize and invalidate yourself. Let me tell you something. Your issue may not be as extreme, but it still changes the way you walk. And that makes it something you shouldn't ignore. Negative thoughts that just won't quit, overthinking everything, catastrophizing, dwelling on old mistakes or wounds. These thought patterns can seriously mess with our peace of mind. The important thing here is awareness of our critical inner voice, and having the courage to change the words we tell ourselves and take control over the thoughts we think. Our second saboteur attacks our understanding of the life, the universe, and everything. First, let me say that we can unknowingly have very unbiblical conceptions of ourselves, our circumstances, our spouses, our friends, the church, and even God. One of my previous clients had done something devastating. She was repentant, but there was absolutely no way to make things right. So because she subconsciously believed God could not forgive her, she hid in shame. For 40 years, her guilt was actually physically eating her up on the inside. Depending on what we believe about the nature of reality, we can carry around unnecessary loads of frustration, anger, disappointment, guilt, and shame. Folks, we live in a fallen world, and Scripture makes it positively clear that becoming a child of God does not end our problems. They just change. But what are some common misconceptions? See if you recognize any of these. What is, I shouldn't mess up so often or make so many mistakes? What is, my spouse should complete me? What is, my family and friends should always understand me and never let me down? What is, I deserve to be happy? What is, if I remain in God's will, He will protect me from all my problems? What is, I should be able to do it all? What is, if I change who I am to please others, they will treat me with dignity and respect? What is, my life should look more like my friends' lives on Facebook? What is, my circumstances will never improve? What is, I can't change? When my client challenged her belief about God's character and believed in her heart that Scripture was true, she was able to receive His forgiveness, forgive herself, and even experience physical healing. Our third sneaky saboteur likes to seep into the cracks and crevices of our lives when we least expect it, throwing everything into confusion. This one habit could be causing most of your problems. You see, we are limited creatures whom God has made responsible for a limited number of things. But instead of taking ownership only for those things, many times we get sucked into taking responsibility for things that are not ours. But how do you know how you've fallen into this trap? Well, to find out, let's play a little game with ourselves. Each one of these little bear counters stands for your answer to the following questions. If you answer yes, put that little bear in the lack of boundaries circle. Do you ever feel drained or overwhelmed in your daily life? Do you wish others would pull their own weight instead of you having to do most of the work? Do you put everyone else's needs above your own? Do you ever procrastinate or overcommit? Would you feel guilty or afraid to say no to someone who asks you to do something? Do you feel like setting limits on your time or energy makes you a selfish person? Do you wish you had time to pursue a hobby or interest? Do you feel responsible for making other people angry or upset or like you have to walk on eggshells? Would you rather avoid conflict than work through problems? Do you feel like self-care is wrong or sinful? Okay, how did you do? To be honest, I used to have all of those little bears in my circle. But as a recovering lack of boundaries person, I can tell you there is so much more peace on the other side. This fourth saboteur is a greedy little thing, doesn't want you to know it exists. And I'm not even sure why it is not exposed everywhere, because at some point, everyone needs to know what to do when faced with the most common condition known to man. When unresolved issues from your past trigger things in your present, it usually manifests in one or more of these three big ways: anger or frustration, sadness or depression, or anxiety or panic attacks. So let me ask you one simple question. How do you cope with suffering? I conduct assessments for a local nonprofit, and this is one of the most interesting questions I get to ask. After I've heard about the challenges these precious individuals have lived through, when we come to this question, probably 80 to 90% have no idea what to do. Some cry, disassociate, yell, or throw things. Others try to self-medicate with substances, or stay up way too late binge watching Netflix, buy things they don't need, spend hours scrolling on social media, or eat all the food, anything to numb those strong emotions. You might know exactly what I'm talking about. These coping mechanisms probably developed over time, but at this point in your life, they no longer serve you. What many don't realize is that these behaviors simply make their underlying problems worse. Or if you do realize it, you feel like there aren't any other options, so you continue with these poor choices. Now, in addition to your trauma, you find yourself struggling with poor health or financial burdens or unhealthy relationships. You self-isolate or go looking for love in all the wrong places, thinking that will solve your problems. You'd likely really benefit from some healthy coping skills that can support you as you work through your underlying issues. And that is exactly how I help my private clients and the topics I cover on this channel. So if you'd like more support in this area, go ahead and subscribe and let me know in the comments what video you'd like to see next. The fifth self-sabotaging habit we experience looks a lot like an ostrich with its head in the sand. When I was going through the toughest time in my life, I just knew there was a pot simmering on the back of the stove. I didn't want to take the lid off. I felt like if I actually looked inside and addressed the contents of that pot, I'd never get the lid back on, and I'd be overwhelmed by the tsunami of gunk that would spew out of it. We all have things in our past that we'd rather not address. We have emotions we push down and disregard. Instead of facing our issues head on, we ignore them, hoping they'll go away. But if they're deep wounds, they don't. It's like an unseen infection infecting our emotions and mental health, causing stress and anxiety. And all avoidance does is keep us from healing and growing. The only way to heal is to safely lance that sucker and get all the gunk out. Yes, it might be a bit messy, but wow, you have no idea how awesome you will feel to be rid of all that muck. Now that we've unmasked the top 5 hidden habits that sabotage your peace, you need to know that there's one massive underlying trap that ties them all together, and it's probably responsible for 97% of the challenges you are facing right now. But hardly anyone talks about it. So when it's ready, watch this video next to uncover that final saboteur and fast track your healing.